It is no question that goal scoring is the most important part of hockey. Sure, you could say that good defense, good goaltending, a good coach, but at the end of the day, the team that scores the most goals will win the game. And there is no player that will help you more in that department than Alexander Ovechkin.
Alexander Ovechkin curl and drag to the backhand. He scores! Simply
in comes Ovechkin. Down he's on. Ovechkin
in here.
Fritz crossing, sidestepping a hit. What a move! Ovechkin's in. His chest. Alex Ovechkin.
Ovechkin drive. He scores! His spectacular history-making continues. 700 red lights. He scores! In a flash! Welcome to the club, number 500 for the Great Eight.
And if you didn't know just how good of a goal scorer he is, I'll just let his records talk. He has the most 30-goal seasons, the most 40-goal seasons. He's tied with Bossy and the Great One for the most 50-goal seasons. He has the most consecutive 30-goal seasons at 15, a streak that would still be going to this day if it weren't for the pandemic. He's made his living on the power play where no one has scored as much as he has, and that's the same thing for overtime. Pretty much every stat that involves goal scoring somewhere or another points to Alexander Ovechkin being the greatest goal scorer of all time. Except the big one, the one that he's currently on the hunt for. Gretzky's goal record of 894. That was thought to be untouchable, but over the past few seasons, Ovi has been lessening the gap between him and Wayne, and now it's just a matter of time. You can tell that Ovechkin is determined to break this record. He started the season with 15 goals in his first 18 games, which was one of the best starts to a season by a player of his age. It looked like he would break this record by mid-season. That was until he was injured. A knee-on-knee collision kept him out of the Caps lineup for 5 weeks, putting the 894 conversation on hold for the time being. But he came back and he didn't miss a beat. Since returning from injury, Ovi has 11 goals in 20 games, putting him at 26 goals in 38 games this season, which is tied for 9th in the entire league despite him missing 16 games. This is actually one of the most productive seasons of his entire career. Take a look at this red line. It represents Ovechkin's points per 60 minutes, and as you can see, it's his second best season since 2009-2010 when he racked up 107 points. His assists per 60 minutes is about average, which isn't that surprising. He's never been much of a passer, and now more than ever, his focus is purely on goal scoring. And that is clear when you consider that he's never had a season over his 20-year NHL career where he's scored more goals per 60 minutes than he is right now. Ovechkin is scoring at a rate of 2.3 goals per 60, which is more than he did in 07-08, where he scored 65 goals. All metrics say that this guy has a lot of gas left in the tank, and he's going to break that record this year, and he's going to do so by any means possible. And that means putting in every single empty net goal he can. This is actually one of the biggest criticisms that he faces now. First, it was him being a power play merchant, and now he's an empty net merchant. And this talk really started last season when he surpassed Gretzky for the most empty net goals in NHL history. Now, this makes sense. For someone who scored so many goals, almost as many as the Great One, you would expect him to be up there in empty netters. But now as he moves closer and closer to Gretzky, every empty netter that he scores is scrutinized because they're so-called easy goals. Yeah, there's no goalie, but when the team pulls their goalie, they get an extra player on the ice, making it 6-on-5. That means the team trying to score is outnumbered and under a lot of pressure, especially the last few minutes of a close game where one mistake could cost them the win. Plus, these goals aren't always simple. You often shoot from all the way down the ice trying to hit a small net while defenders are blocking shots, trying to steal the puck, and even throwing hits your way. And no one works harder for these empty netters than Ovechkin does. Whenever he has the puck in these situations, he's got multiple players all over him trying to shut him down, yet no one does it better than he does. And honestly, in my opinion, this just adds to how diverse of a goal scorer he actually is. And although he does have the most in history, he's not the biggest empty net merchant in the league. Since the start of the 2015 season, the empty net goal leaders go like this. Ovechkin is obviously at the top, followed by Sebastian Aho, Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Mikko Rantanen, Kyle Connor, Jonathan Marchessault, Artemi Panarin, Andrei Svechnikov, and then Jake Gensel to round out the top 10. So looking at this, yes, Ovechkin does look like the biggest abuser of the empty net. But if you actually break it down and look at what percentage of the total goals these players score are empty netters, it tells a different story. Ovechkin, over the past 10 seasons, has only scored 9.6% of his goals on the empty net, whereas Aho, Marchessault, and Svechnikov have all scored more than 10%. 10% of their goals on the empty net, with Svechnikov scoring 16% of his goals at 6-on-5. Among the players in the league who score the most empty net goals, Ovechkin actually has a fairly average percentage of his total goals coming from them. He just happens to have the perfect combination of being on the ice often when the opposing team pulls their goalie and consistently scoring a ton of regular goals. So yes, Ovechkin has scored more empty net goals than anyone else in the history of the league, but he's also scored on more goalies than anyone else in the history of the game. To put down his ability to score goals is basically ignoring one of the greatest goal-scoring careers in NHL history, which is just ridiculous. Gretzky is second in empty net goals, and no one ever talks about that. Ovechkin and Gretzky's ratio of empty net goals to regular goals are actually pretty similar. Ovi scores about 1 empty net goal for every 14 regular goals, and Gretzky scores 1 every 16. Now, take a look at those players who led in terms of percentage over their career. Aho scores an empty net goal once every 9 goals, Marchessault once every 10, and Svechnikov once every 6. So Ovechkin's goals that come from empty netters is actually pretty average compared to other top players. If people are going to knock him for that, they'd have to knock guys like Gretzky too. And he's scoring these empty netters now, but I don't think he would score either 894 or 895 on an empty net. Go back 2 years to when he scored his 802nd goal to pass Gordie Howe. Yes, it was on an empty net, but he clearly didn't want it to be.
Huff doesn't want to shoot it.
I'm not sure Ovi wanted to shoot it either.
There it is! There it is! Alex Ovechkin has overtaken Mr. Hockey.
Now, a goal is a goal, but you have to be insane to think that Ovi's gonna break the record on an empty netter. If I had to bet, it's from the left circle on the power play. But when would that be? What game will Ovechkin do the impossible? He's on pace to do it this season, just what game? Ovechkin is scoring at 0.6 goals per game, so at his current pace, it'll take him about 24 games to pass Gretzky, give or take 2. So according to that, these are the most likely games that Ovechkin will score 895. Obviously considering there's no hiccups along the way. April 1st in Boston, April 2nd in Carolina, April 4th at home against Chicago, April 7th on Long Island, and then April 10th against Carolina at home. Now, I know he can't pick and choose where he breaks the record or when he breaks the record, but I'm going to guess that he wants to break it at home, and given Chicago's the worst team, that's my guess. April 4th against Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks, Alexander Ovechkin will score 895 and surpass Wayne Gretzky as the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game. Many people already believe he is the best, but when he passes the great one, there will be no doubt. At the end of the day, Ovechkin's chase for Gretzky's record isn't just about numbers. It's about redefining what we thought was even possible in hockey. He's faced criticism at every turn, whether it's power play goals, empty netters, or his age. Yet he silenced doubters with every puck he's buried in the back of the net. When he finally scores that 895th goal, it won't just be a record-breaking moment, it will be a final piece of a legacy that proves Ovechkin isn't just one of the greatest goal scorers. We'll finally have to admit he is the greatest goal scorer. And honestly, when that puck crosses the goal line, it won't matter how he did it, because history won't ask how, they'll just remember how many.